Leafs make massive trade. No, I'm just kidding. But the Leafs do make an interesting trade today with the Colorado Avalanche involving our guy Denis Malgin. His time here did not quite work out. But who is Dryden Hunt? What's up, Leafs fans, and welcome back to Leafs Digest. Now, as you must have seen today, the Toronto Maple Leafs did, in fact, make a move. It was involving the somewhat, I don't even know how to describe him, controversial player in this Leafs lineup in Denis Malgin. I guess controversial would be the word that comes to mind due to the fact that he was involved in the trade that saw Mason Marchment leave this organization and go on to be the player that Leafs fans sat here and drooled over all of the time. But ultimately, you can't really see some of those things happening sometimes. Sometimes you just see a player not fitting into your system, so you have to move on, and you feel like you could get something back that could be valuable to you in that moment. Yes, it's a little bit of a head scratcher, head shaker, a little bit of a no-no in hindsight, but it did happen. We have to move forward. We have to look at what is happening now and the pieces that he was able to get us, or the piece that he was able to get us in return in this point in time. So before we get into all of that, I want to remind everyone, if you're watching right now and have not hit that subscribe button, make sure you do so. You can subscribe to this channel, click that bell, turn on notifications so you get notified every single time that we go live on this channel or videos are posted here. You can also hit like on this video, drop your comments below about your thoughts on the Denis Malgin Dryden Hunt trade. Let me know what you think about it, if you feel like Dryden Hunt may be an impact player here in Toronto, and of course, let me know how much you're going to miss Denis Malgin. Moving on, I was almost going to call him Evgeny there. Denis Malgin was a guy who was traded for Mason Marchment a couple of years ago. Denis Malgin was the guy that immediately when we was traded for, everyone sat here and said, what are we doing? He's 5'9", 175 pounds, a small skill forward, and when that is the prototypical Kyle Dubas player. Now, yes, it kind of was. It was that skilled forward that you thought, hey, maybe this guy's going to be fast and he can put up a lot of points and dance around the ice, and it just didn't really pan out here. So the Leafs gave him an opportunity to go back to Switzerland. He takes it. He goes back there, dominates, lights it up, whatever you want to call it, comes back here to the Leafs. They give him another opportunity. He has an incredible preseason, leading the league, leading the entire NHL in preseason points, and you're sitting there thinking, wow, this is going to work out. What a signing. What a genius move. Let the guy develop, get some confidence, come back, and he can translate it to the NHL game. It'll work out here, and it's the perfect fit at $750K. Well, that was not the case, unfortunately. As soon as the NHL season started, things just basically went sour for Denis Malgin. He couldn't find the back of the net. He couldn't find any point production. And it's unfortunate because if you actually just watched him play, he wasn't playing poorly. He just couldn't produce. And at some point, that's going to catch up to you. Can you produce? He was here to be a guy who could contribute offensively. He wasn't here to be a guy who could just play the game well. When you look at guys who you're looking at to do that, you're looking at Pontus Holmberg, Zach Aston Reese, David Kampf. Those are guys that you're asking to come here and play a specific role, and you're not demanding points out of them. You're not demanding scoring and all that kind of stuff. Denis Malgin, you were looking for point production. You were looking for him to join the William Nylander, John Tavares line at first and create all these points. You were looking for him to join the Marner and Tavares line yet again when he got reinserted back and make some type of impact and help that line out. And he just never really did so. In 23 games played so far this season, he had 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points. He had a bunch of opportunities, and he could just never really cash in. And then on top of that, creating offense, he struggled a little bit with, so it just never really seemed to work out. In and out of the lineup, up and down the lineup, he could not really find a home. So Kyle Dubas and the management group decided it's time to move on and see what we can do about this. Well, today was the day that they found out what they could do, and that was a trade with the Colorado Avalanche for Dryden Hunt. Dryden Hunt, for those of you who don't know, is 6 foot, 192 pounds. He's 27 years old. Left hand, left winger, or center if you can play that as well. $762K cap hit, so he's coming in a little bit higher than Denis Malgin, 162. Oh my goodness, I can't even think about it right now. That number is messing with me. 12K more cap hit than Denis Malgin. So he inserts in here with minimal cap effect. This is a guy who has played on a ton of different teams. He went from Florida to Arizona to New York to Colorado, now to Toronto. And in fact, this season alone, he's played in New York, in Colorado, and now in Toronto. So third team, only about a third of the way through this season here. So hopefully things can work out for Dryden Hunt here in Toronto. That's what Leafs fans are going to be hoping for, and that's what this management group is going to be hoping for. But what are we getting out of Dryden Hunt? Well, this is a guy who scored 116 points in 72 games in his last year in Medicine Hat in the WHL. He ends up going to Florida's farm team, Springfield Thunderbirds. He goes to the ECHL, he goes back to the AHL, then he finds his way somehow getting called up to Florida, getting sent down from Florida, and he was up and down there, never really found a home. Ends up moving on to the Arizona Coyotes. Things weren't necessarily amazing for him in Arizona, goes on to New York, ultimately finds himself in a trade to the ultimately finds himself on his way to the Colorado Avalanche in this season. And so far this year, I mean, he started in New York, 3 games played, he had 1 goal. Then he goes to Colorado, finds himself in 25 games, only has 1 goal there. So for Dryden Hunt this season, point production, not really his thing. But what does Dryden Hunt bring? He brings physicality, he brings energy, he brings some young legs, and ultimately, what I believe he's going to be here for and why I think this management group wanted to bring him in, I think they think he can be what they hoped Aube-Kubel would be. A guy who can be very prominent defensively. He has very good underlying metrics. Defensively, his analytics there are good, but he's a low event player. He's essentially good at possessing the puck, not giving it away. He's not really going to make crazy mistakes because he's not trying things too much, trying things offensively too much because he knows his capabilities. He's just going to be more of a role player. Now, that being said, we have role players. Why do we need another one? Well, he does bring a little bit of a different aspect. He's got about 70 hits in the 28 games that he's played so far in the NHL this season. So he's got a lot of energy. And most notably, if you look him up or if you've seen already online, he laid out David Pastrnak the other day and ended up fighting Thomas Nosek. And it was a pretty good battle that he had there. So this is a guy who can fight. He will hit. He can play well defensively. He's not really going to do anything, essentially, offensively. Maybe he can just kind of provide some energy and fit into this lineup somewhere where he can find himself some points here or there. He obviously had some type of point accumulating ability before he got to the NHL. He had it a bit in the minors. It just never really translated when he got to the pros. So how will this fit in Toronto? We will find out. But where is he going to fit in this lineup? Well, I imagine the immediate move is going to be putting Alex Kerfoot up onto the second line. As we know, Calle Järnkrok is out right now. There's no timetable set on when he's going to return in the immediate future. So I think Kerfoot slides up to the second line left wing spot. And based on what I think is going on with the fourth line, I think they would like him there probably at some point to push Joey Anderson out. But with the fact that you have some of these injuries, you have guys who can't necessarily go right now, as is Calle Järnkrok. He can't fit in. Nick Robertson, obviously injured. You're likely going to keep that fourth line together. They've been playing pretty well, not really making too many mistakes. They're basically there to be shut down, some energy, and Pontus Holmberg's really finding his own. Zach Aston Reese is kind of participating in that line, just being a good piece there. Joey Anderson has been essentially fine, in my opinion. No, not great, not horrible, but he's been fine. So I can't imagine they'd want to really mess up that fourth line. Where I think they would slot him in is on the third line left wing. Now, this is strictly an assumption, but my thought is he's going to go there with 2 guys who can play well defensively together already. You slide him onto a defensive line that can be defensive-minded first, and then maybe you can use some of his energy and his puck possession ability to kind of grind down teams. Him, Engvall, Kampf, they'll be pretty good guys at containing the puck, possessing the puck down below the goal line of the other team, having cycle opportunities, hemming them in for extended periods of time, and basically killing time until you can get the Matthews and the Tavares lines back out on the ice. I think it's kind of that gap over line where you can put him in there, create some energy, hit somebody, maybe fight a guy, and then he can go get off the ice and get the actual guys that you want out there on in between without any mistakes coming the other way. Him already being a good defensive player, putting him alongside David Kampf, Pierre Engvall, how well they play defense together. I think that could be a good combination for the short term, but in the long term, I'd imagine he's probably going to slide down to the fourth line when you get a guy like Calle Järnkrok back, slide him back in second line, wherever it is, third line if they put him there, if they feel more comfortable with him there, and then he slides down. But ultimately, my thought is I think he's going to be what they hoped Aube-Kubel would be. He's just a heavier guy, 6 foot, 192 pounds, not the heaviest guy, but he plays a little bit of a heavier game for who he is and his stature. So hopefully he can bring a little bit of grit to this lineup and help them out in that sense. Thank you guys so much for tuning in here. Let me know what you think about this trade. Let me know how you feel about the departure of Denis Malgin and how you feel about Dryden Hunt entering into this Leafs lineup. Look forward to seeing everyone after the next live stream against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Thank you so much for your support. Make sure to hit subscribe, hit like on this video. Keep a Leafin'.